The Max Kellerman Show. Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio.
Yes, it's the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio. What's up, nerds? ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join me on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Be a part of Max Kellerman Nation on the Dr. Pepper call-in line. I know people want to talk about that game last night. That was so much fun to watch. I'm going to get into that in a second. ESPN Nation is presented by Dr. Pepper. The college football season is heating up, and so is your favorite Dr. Pepper-loving college football town, Fansville. Head to a store near you to treat your inner college football fan to an ice-cold 20-ounce Dr. Pepper today. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Yeah, that was a fun game. You know, for years, black quarterbacks, oh, he's getting racial right away. That's right. Black quarterbacks were not, were told to play other positions. Warren Moon had to go to Canada. He could lead the nation in passing. No one cared. Or at least white people who were in charge didn't care. And then for years, we heard that to be a multidimensional quarterback was a bad thing. And, you can make a correlation, a strong positive correlation that there were a lot of black quarterbacks that were multidimensional, who could throw and run. And it was a kind of stereotype, a pernicious stereotype, that they didn't have other abilities, like mental faculties, to be able to really leadership qualities to lead a team, right? But then there were kind of they're not stereotypes, but there's kind of softer messaging in there. You don't want to run for a first down because obviously there were also white quarterbacks who could run, but you don't want to run for a first down because if you ran for a first down, then yeah, sure, you could get the first down right then, but you never really developed that pocket awareness, that pocket presence. And it's kind of like your short-term incentive to pick up the first down interfered with your long-term development as a quarterback. So if you were a quarterback, a multi-dimensional quarterback, don't use all those dimensions. And by the way, I bought into the orthodoxy in a way, in the sense that I thought, yeah, there might be something to that. That it did seem that quarterbacks who were thinking run first didn't fare very well compared to the 6'5" pocket quarterback who hung in there and delivered the ball down the field. But of course, part of me always thought, wait a minute, hold on. Why wouldn't you want to do both? Like I watched Steve Young play. That looked pretty good to me. So anyway, last night I'm watching Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray, two-sport athletes, both were drafted to play Major League Baseball. But by the way, Kyler Murray in the top 10 by the Oakland Athletics. At any rate, both guys under 6 feet tall, and both African-American quarterbacks. And boy, that game was contested on a very high level, and it was a lot of fun. Kyler Murray did not have, by the way, it's not like that's the first time it's happened, but especially given the backdrop, in the last several years in our country, that did not escape my attention. And Kyler Murray didn't have his, typically excellent game of late. And that's a lot to do with the fact that the Seattle defense came through. Jamal Adams has played a little bit now. My cell phone is interfering with the signal. Is that what you're going to tell me? Chris is producing today. This is a big day for you, Chris. Raj is taking vacation, and Chris is producing. And Chris, have you had fantasies about replacing Raj on this show as producer? You're going to do such a good job that
I'm just wondering if I could get a headshot like him. I don't have a headshot like him, so I can't compare.
No headshot. Yeah, that's true. Raj put a glamour shot on this show. That's right. Anyway, so Seattle really came, like Jamal Adams is playing, and Carlos Dunlap, look, they make a trade with the Bengals to bring in a real defender, right, who gets paid a lot of money but is unhappy where he is. And he makes a play. He makes a play on that really seals the win. Not to mention, the Seattle Seahawks got at least half their running game back. Their offensive line has not been the issue it's been, like 3 and 4 years ago when they made that trade for Jimmy Graham, however many years ago that was, and their kind of pass protection and run blocking fell apart. But they've been getting offensive line play, but they don't have anyone to run the ball. Carlos Hyde comes back. The defender you brought in to make a play makes a play. You can be more aggressive with defensive calls with Jamal Adams in. That happens. And Russell Wilson, with his back a little bit to the wall, I liked against Kyler Murray in that matchup anyway. But how much fun was that to watch? I don't know. It's not like it was the most crisply contested game. And my my favorite game of the season was the Patriots and Seattle in week 2. I thought that was a really well-played game and a lot of fun to watch. This was not as well-played. Look, it's a Thursday game. It's a short week. But, I was thinking, like, boy, stereotypes and a power structure that didn't want things to change and institutional racism, right? Boy, they prevented the NFL from having a better product much sooner. And that, by the way, that goes for, I'm really not trying to like shoehorn race into, this occurred to me as I sat down and started talking to you. Anytime you exclude a group, you are at a competitive disadvantage, whether that's the kind of product you're peddling, the quality of it, or how competitive you'll be in a league or whatever. If you exclude an entire group, the pool of applicants for the job you need filled is necessarily smaller, and so you're going to find inferior applicants than if you include as many potential applicants as possible. That's the way it works. Anyway, I really didn't plan on getting racial off the top of the show, but it did occur to me, and it's important on radio, I always find, to be honest about what you're thinking about. I was thinking, like, what a fun game. How many years? The NFL's had a great product for forever. But it's better and better to watch, and that has coincided with the kind of crumbling of stereotypes and glass ceilings, by the way. And this it just happened in baseball too. First female GM and Asian American GM, which was surprising to me. I didn't realize that, but it's true. Miami, Derek Jeter hires the first female GM in the history of baseball. Think that's a competitive advantage for the Marlins? It is. I know it is. You know why? Because if she's the first female GM, that means of every woman who's ever worked in baseball, you got to take not only like an all-star, but you probably plucked the MVP of that entire group. It's like what Branch Rickey did with the Dodgers in the 40s. He took Jackie Robinson, then Roy Campanella, Don Newcomb. You might as well just pluck an all-star team from the Negro Leagues if no one else is going to do it, right? But, okay, I'm going to leave the social stuff aside for a second because I didn't even mean to get this deep into it, but I was thinking about it. It was a great win for Seattle. It was a great win for Seattle because the NFC West, everyone acknowledges, is the best team in best division in football. And it's the best division by quite a bit. It's not like it's by a little bit. There's no soft touch in the division. In fact, the defending NFC champions, right? They made it to the Super Bowl last year. And they had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. And if not for the best quarterback I've ever seen, with the most weapons around him you can imagine, if not for him calling his own number, dropping back 15 steps and throwing a 60-yard pass, if not for that, the Niners would be defending Super Bowl champs and the worst team in the division. Of course, it's because Garoppolo's hurt. With Garoppolo healthy, who knows what the Niners could have done. But, like, you look at the division, who was supposed to be the worst team in the division, and I thought they'd be pretty good, was Arizona. And Arizona's been in second place, at least, in the NFC West for a long time now. But where's the soft touch? No easy games. A monster division. And Seattle took a commanding lead in that division early because they just didn't lose, because Russell Wilson was winning shootout after shootout. Although I will point out that when they had that close game in Week 2 against the Patriots, it was Bobby Wagner, an elite defender, however he's played this year, but generally an elite defender, not just like, oh, he's a Pro Bowl player. No, that's an all-pro type player, making a play on the goal line, right? Like, that's actually how Seattle won against the Patriots, against Cam Newton. But otherwise, they didn't have the worst schedule early, but they were undefeated for a while. Russell Wilson winning shootout after shootout. But, over time, if you lose Carlos Hyde and Chris Carson, and this is before you got Dunlap, before you brought in a guy who could make a play, and Jamal Adams is hurt, yeah, it's not going to be the same, especially in a division with this. Once the Cardinals traded for DeAndre Hopkins, it was going to be tough. So anyway, Seattle, after that commanding lead, it's chipped away. Here come the Rams. Oh my God, look at that defense. And it's not simply McVay with a parlor trick in his first season. Then the league catches up. He doesn't have an answer. No, he has an answer. He readjusts. The offense looks better. Here comes Arizona with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. And look, Cliff Kingsbury actually is a good coach, it turns out. And the Niners, okay, they don't have Garoppolo, but it's still a tough out. And Seattle's lead is chipped away. All of a sudden, they're looking around. They look vulnerable. Not a lot of people like them to come out of the NFC. They needed this game, and they got it. It was their best performance all around of the season, except for maybe the Patriots game. Let's not forget the Patriots are coming off a 2-score win against Miami. And then right after that, they beat the Raiders by more than 2 scores. So that was a good Patriots team that Seattle beat. It's either Week 2 or this game against Arizona. Those are the two best, most well-rounded performances of the season. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. Max Kellerman Show, presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who save with Progressive save over $750 on average. Call or click today and find out if they could save you hundreds on your car insurance.
Titans and Ravens.
Oh, we're into the NFL whip around already. See, Chris, you got to say.
Time for NFL whip around. You got 60 seconds. I'm trying to give you as much time as possible. The clock's going to start right now.
All right. So now you got to announce the game.
First matchup: Titans at Ravens.
And Ravens.
Raj is resting easy today. He's turned on the radio, Chris, and he's thought, okay, great. He's going to take vacation next week too. Titans at Ravens. Ravens going to win this game, and the Ravens are going to win it because they're more desperate. They don't want to go on a losing streak. They very, very rarely lose to a team that's not the Kansas City Chiefs or not in the playoffs, right? Now, they lost to the Titans in the playoffs last year, but that was the playoff game, I think, as much as it being, the Titans. My head tells me that Tennessee is playing better right now and is a more well-rounded team right now. But I'm going to take the Ravens because I think, much like in this Seattle game, I think their back is up against the wall, and I think they'll play a little more desperately, and for that reason, I like Lamar Jackson and the Ravens.
All right, here comes your next matchup.
Packers at Colts.
I like the Packers here. The Colts are a good team, minus a quarterback. Phillip Rivers, Phillip Rivers was a guy I really thought was going to win a Super Bowl. I thought Eli won 2 and Roethlisberger won 2, and Rivers going to get at least 1. Those 3 guys came out in the same draft class. And so in my mind, at least, they're connected, especially Rivers and Eli were technically traded for each other, along, Rivers and stuff for Eli. And Rivers put up great numbers with Norv Turner and San Diego, but he couldn't win the big one. Never won a Super Bowl. And I thought a couple years ago he had his best chance, and he goes to Foxborough, looks like a deer in headlights. And I kind of soured on with Rivers after that. I felt like maybe it's not coincidence that he hadn't won a Super Bowl or just bad luck. And at this point also, he's very old. Like, Eli's gone. Roethlisberger is looking good, but he's coming off a catastrophic injury, which also gave him a year's rest. Rivers has outplayed my expectations of him, but still I don't think good enough to beat Aaron Rodgers.
Next matchup.
Cowboys and Vikings.
You know, I got to say something. Mike McCarthy has the Cowboys. Like, I was sure he was the wrong coach for the job, mainly because Jerry Jones wanted him for the job. He knew he could push him around. No one was banging down Mike McCarthy's door. And when he claimed, oh, now I know about analytics. No, he doesn't. They're trying to spin it for the press and for the fans. And they didn't look good early. But I got to tell you, considering he hasn't had his quarterback or his backup quarterback, I feel like he's had the Cowboys ready to play, to tell you the truth. I felt like they were ready to play against the Eagles early. Against the Steelers, they're just at a talent deficit at the most important position right now. But they've been playing well. That said, the Vikings have more than the Cowboys right now, and they've shown the ability actually to beat good teams this year. And I expect the Vikings to win.
Next matchup.
Lions and Panthers.
Oh, who cares? Am I really going to talk about the Lions and Panthers? All right, fine. I think the Panthers are, though their defense has trended in the wrong direction, I think I look at the Panthers the way sometimes I look at this year, the way sometimes I look at the Broncos in other years. Even when the Broncos had bad record, usually I think if you went to Denver and beat them, I consider that a quality win. Even in a down year for Denver, I think at least a quasi-quality win. That's how I see the Panthers now. I see if you beat the Panthers, even though they're not very good, it's still a quality win. They're not an easy, as I mentioned before, an easy out exactly. And I like them to beat Detroit because they're at home.
Next matchup.
Eagles and Browns.
Carson Wentz. Look, Carson Wentz may be better than Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is a starting quarterback. Maybe not a franchise quarterback, but a starting quarterback. And Carson Wentz has shown the ability to be in the MVP conversation, right? But he has regressed shockingly. And when you look around these two teams, on both sides of the ball, the Browns are better, and the Browns are at home. I like Cleveland.
Next matchup.
Falcons and Saints.
Boy, if there's a time for the Falcons to get a win against the Saints, it would be right now. And the Taysom Hill story, we're going to get into it. That's a big story. You know, Sean Payton came on First Take before the Super Bowl when we were down in Miami, and he was talking about Taysom Hill, and I had no reason to doubt him. I thought, sometimes teams want to front like they're going to do one thing to psych other teams out, and because they actually are working on a trade or they want to, have them prepare for the wrong guy. I couldn't figure out what the hell he was doing trying to trick me about Taysom Hill, so I believed him. And I also, how everyone, you have your little pet players, your favorite players. Taysom Hill is one of mine. When I watch him, I think, why isn't he the best player in football? I mentioned it today, Walter Payton, a lot of people think is the greatest football player of all time, not just as a running back, but a football player. You watch Odell Beckham Jr. throw with his left hand a spiral 50 yards. You're like, oh my God, this guy could do everything. Taysom Hill's kind of one of those guys, except that he doesn't do any one thing that, in such a great way that it makes him great at that position. He can just do everything you want a football player to do. So when they were going to start Jameis, it looked like I thought he must not be able to read defenses. But this tells me Sean Payton thinks he can. And, of course, he's been in the offense for years. He knows it better than Jameis Winston. I'm still expecting the Saints to beat the Falcons.
All right, two left.
Dolphins and Broncos.
As I said, I think if you beat the Broncos, particularly at Denver, that's a quality win. The Dolphins have not lost in a month and a half now. So if they were going to lose, I think this is the kind of game they lose. But I'm picking them to win it. I don't think Tua is doing it with smoke and mirrors. I know he's riding the defense. Guys, he's a rookie quarterback. He's coming off of hip surgery, and he has a bad foot now. And all he's done is survive the Rams defense, didn't try and do too much. Some young quarterbacks will get up, try and overcompensate. He didn't. He just played game manager, threw a nice strike for a touchdown and otherwise game managed, and they won. And then since then, he's averaging about 200 yards with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But by the way, which 2 quarterbacks did he face off against? Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert. After watching those games, did you get the sense that the other guy was better than Tua? I didn't. I'd rather have Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert than Tua, but I can't say he was like badly outplayed by either guy. I like Miami. I think Miami's live. They're my Super Bowl sleeper. I mean sleeper. I don't mean they're one of my top 2 or 3 picks. But if you want to take an actual sleeper that people are not thinking can win a Super Bowl or get there right now, Miami would be mine, and I like them to win a tough game.
And we're going to finish with Sunday night's matchup.
Chiefs and Raiders.
Well, Raiders already beaten the Chiefs once. And when you think about how that happened, remember Casey Joyner, the football scientist, on this show, on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio, 2 p.m. Eastern, came out and said, look, other teams want the Chiefs in a shootout. Chiefs want to avoid it. What? Patrick Mahomes burst on the scene 2018, won shootout after shootout after shootout to start the year. KC said, no, 2019 and so far this year, he has a 500 record in those games, over 500, but not much. And he's almost undefeated in all other kinds of games. So why is that? Right? Like, doesn't the inferior team want fewer points to be scored in a game so that any one score could wildly swing the outcome, you know? One score all of a sudden, like, oh my God, they got a little lucky, they got a call, they made a play, and they beat the Chiefs. No. You want to keep throwing the ball down the field because in the modern NFL, good things can happen. All the rules favor that kind of play. And it actually gives the less talented team the best chance to win. But guys, it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that they started out with the outside receivers with speed beating the Chiefs defense and Derek Carr playing well and hooking up with those guys down the field. It was that, and the offensive line playing well, really well actually. It was that in the second half, Gruden starts to run the ball, right, and chew clock. It was really, I thought, a great performance by John Gruden. I don't think the Raiders will do it again, but I'll say this. If they do it again, I still have the Chiefs as my number 1 team, and I believe they'll wind up the season 14-2 with 2 losses to a divisional rival. ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. What do you mean join us? It's just me sitting here. You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive's Home Insurance. Get your quote at progressive.com today. So, Myles Garrett's on the COVID-19 reserve list. So I did not mention that when I picked the Browns to beat the Eagles. And given that their best player is on COVID reserve, I'm still picking the Browns to beat the Eagles. Eagles are terrible. According to Adam Schefter, Taysom Hill will start Sunday versus the Falcons. He took starters reps at practice this week. Jameis Winston will be the backup. I think everyone, like, oh my God, this is the end of Jameis Winston's career. Why? Jameis just got there. He's just learning. I know he's the former number 1 overall pick, but he was a bust. He wasn't not a bust. He was a bust. Both number 1 and number 2 that year were busts. Right? You had 2 guys. People had high hopes for him. Neither's with the original team because they underperformed, period. Anyway, Taysom Hill, before the season started, during the Super Bowl last year, Sean Payton was telling me and Stephen A. and Molly in Miami at our Super Bowl show, Taysom Hill is going to be the quarterback of the future. Now, Stephen A. was making a big deal today on First Take about the fact that he's 30 years old. He has only thrown a handful of passes. Why do you think that is? Why do I think that is? Because Drew Brees is 40 years old. If you have Drew Brees, how many passes do you? What about last year? They had Teddy Bridgewater. Oh, so Bridgewater is for them is better than Jameis is now. Yes, that's right. Bridgewater's better than Jameis. That's right. Bridgewater's been slept on. Bridgewater was a nice game-managing type of quarterback with the Vikings, and the question is he just a starter, or might he develop into a franchise player? Then he got hurt. Then he came back, and wherever he's been, he's played pretty well. Maybe not like a franchise quarterback, but like a starter. Jameis is coming off a season where, yeah, he led the league in in passing yards and threw for 33 touchdowns. That's because he had Bruce Arians as a head coach, weapons everywhere he looked, and, no risk it, no biscuit, right? So he got some biscuits. But he threw 30 interceptions, 112 points to the other team. And meantime, Taysom Hill knows the offense. I don't know, I watch Taysom Hill. I go, why isn't this guy the best player in football? I'm telling you, in certain ways, when you talk about who the best player in football is, or no, not who the best player in football is, not who the most valuable player in football is, but who's the best football player, right? Football is a highly specialized sport. Basketball, you should be able to do some of everything. In football, really, a quarterback has a very different skill set and talents than a receiver, than a running back, etc. Now, a lot of these guys are just great athletes, so they can switch positions and still be effective, but they got to learn the new position. Like when I think about who's the best at everything, Odell Beckham, as I said, can throw a spiral 50 yards with his left hand. He could kick field goals. I saw him in batting practice. I saw it on TV. Hit a bunch of home runs in batting practice, right? This dude is just an absurd athlete. But Odell does have one gift that is so high-pitched that he's not just a gadget player. He's a great receiver. He can make plays on a ball. It's ridiculous, right? Taysom Hill is like that kind of player. Taysom Hill's very fast. Taysom Hill's like a 4.4 40. He's strong and tough, like rugged. He can catch the ball, and he can throw the ball. But can he read defenses quickly? Can he process information quickly? I thought maybe not. And he doesn't have like the most beautiful arm of all time, but he can throw the ball. He must not be able to read defenses quickly. It takes a lot mentally to play the quarterback position. Maybe Taysom Hill doesn't have it. No, listen, Sean Payton swore he did. And I was like, yeah, right, then why is it about to start Jameis? He's not about to start Jameis. He wasn't lying about Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill was their plan for the future. That's why they let Bridgewater go, because Taysom Hill is the succession plan from Drew Brees. It's Taysom Hill. I don't know why everyone's so shocked about it. To me, it just shows, oh, look at this. Sean Payton wasn't lying to me. So what Mike Greenberg had to say about it. Of course, you can hear Greeny right before me here on ESPN Radio every day, 12 p.m. Eastern, noon Eastern. He takes you up to 2, and I take you from 2 to 4 Eastern. Here's Greeny on what this means for Jameis.
Every bit as much as it is a sign of their confidence in Taysom Hill, it is absolutely a devastating blow to Jameis Winston. I don't see any other way to look at it. Jameis Winston went to New Orleans in part because this was the perfect place to resurrect his career. Teddy Bridgewater got the ball 5 times last year when Brees got hurt. And Teddy Bridgewater is the starting quarterback in Carolina right now. Those two things are not a coincidence. Those two things are a cause and effect. Jameis Winston is in New Orleans so he could prove to the world, he could learn behind Drew, and he could learn from Sean Payton. And when he got his chance, he could prove to the world that he can be someone other than the guy who turned the ball over 42 times last year. And to me, this decision this week is Sean Payton saying at least a little bit, I don't see it.
This is why I like working with a nice, even-keeled, reasonable person like Stephen A. instead of a hot take artist like Mike Greenberg. Look at that outrageous take by Greenberg. Is he out of his mind? No, I mean, it's a reasonable take. Of course, yeah, right. Jameis at practice isn't showing them enough to start over Taysom Hill. My point is not that it's not devastating to Jameis, but it's not necessarily devastating to Jameis. Jameis is a backup, but they didn't bring him in to be Drew Brees' successor. If you believe the coach, they already have Drew Brees' successor. Well, why don't you use him as the backup? That's a good question. It's a good question. Why isn't Taysom Hill simply the backup? Is it because, as a gadget player, he plays enough that there's an injury risk? Is it because, hey, you have a chance to have Jameis Winston as your number 3 quarterback on the depth chart? Former number 1 overall pick, did throw 33 touchdowns and lead the league in passing yards last year. Not a bad thing to have. But I don't think it's necessarily devastating for Jameis. Taysom Hill also knows this offense inside and out, you would imagine by now. And by the way, from every position, from running back, fullback, wideout, quarterback, wildcat, whatever it is, Taysom Hill understands what they're trying to do with this offense. I get it. you know what else? I'm glad Taysom Hill's getting a chance. I want to see it. He's one of my favorite players. I want to see, is it in fact the case that none of his skills are pitched high enough that he can't be a star, he can only ever be a gadget player? I'd like to see him get the chance. I want to see what he can do. I don't care that he's 30 years old. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time is playing in front of him. Drew Brees is 40 years old. Taysom Hill could have gotten there when he was 20 and Drew Brees was 30. He'd be in the same position today. There was a big battle last night that wasn't on the field. No Doubt is next. The Home Depot improves things. This holiday season, the Home Depot improved Black Friday. Instead of one day of crazy, the Home Depot... The Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio, ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, and SiriusXM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests join me on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Worst... Oh, well, okay, wait a minute. No, we're going to do No Doubt now, okay? All right, No Doubt time. See, Chris, usually what Raj would do is he'd get on the mic and, say something to lead up to No Doubt. It's time for No Doubt.
No Doubt is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Build your winning team today. Go to linkedin.com/sports.
I'm going to get right down to it.
We got you covered.
Let me tell you what I think it means.
No Doubt.
Don't worry, Raj is going to make an
go, Chris.
appearance on this, No Doubt. Kelly Oubre Jr. is going to help the Warriors make the playoffs.
Nah, son. I mean, the Warriors are going to make the playoffs because there are 8 teams in the playoffs, and then there's going to be a play-in game between 9 and 10. You know what it's called when the season's over and you're still playing? It's the postseason. Playoffs, play-in, call it what you want. So 10 out of 15 teams per conference make the playoffs. That's nothing. Kelly Oubre Jr., he's okay. Kelly Oubre's okay. He's nothing special. He's not, maybe at his best season, he's an average starter. But he's not a shooter. Not really. So really what the Warriors need are shooters, and he is not one. I don't think he's going to help them very much.
Gordon Hayward opting out of $34.2 million was a smart move.
No doubt. Knicks are going to give him that on average for many years. You'll find. Listen, given the salary cap, Gordon Hayward's not worth that. I like Gordon Hayward. He's a good player. Can be part of a championship team, I believe. Because he doesn't need the ball, and yet he can score. And you can use his passing in almost any lineup. He's just a good player. But he's not a great player, and he wants to be paid like a great player. So it's strictly for teams like the Knicks to show that they can get respectable, that type of thing. But there are enough teams like that there. He's about to get paid.
Robinson Cano has played his last Major League Baseball game.
Nah, son. Nope. If he can get back, someone will give him a look. Like he'll get into some game at least to see if he can still hit. The question with Cano is how much was he a creation of the juice? Period, Like he came up with the Yankees as a nice hitting second baseman, and he eventually turned into a monster. But look at the size of Cano. Strong to play second base. In my day, that's what a right fielder looked like. And Cano, I don't know, Cano, if he were clean, would have a shot at the Hall of Fame. But given how many times he's been caught already, I don't think he's going to get in. I think he'll play at least one more Major League game, though.
All right, Jeezy was the clear winner versus Gucci Mane last night.
I didn't see it. I just followed on Twitter. I did not see it. How was it?
I had it. It was on in the background at work here. It sounded like it was pretty good.
Yeah, all right. I'm sure it was. I did not get to see it, I got 2 jobs and 3 kids. So, what can I tell you? Didn't see Jeezy versus Gucci Mane last night, but Jeezy has a deeper catalog. So, in a battle situation, you'd expect that to prevail.
Raj
what else?
Will return from vacation with a better headshot, and it's up on TV now.
Nah, son. Not because it would be hard to do, but because Raj is delusional and believes that this really makes him look good. Like, people are finally going to get to see the man behind the curtain. And it's this guy. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to show them I'm going to look good. I'm going to look good for TV.
He's even got a raised eyebrow.
He's got a... That's the cheesiest headshot. The blazer doesn't fit him. I think he has a bracelet on, which you can't see because we have the Max Kellerman Show graphics there. Yeah. So Kyler Murray ran out of miracles against the Seahawks defense. The Seahawks defense of all things. Chris, I just called it the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
That's guests, not callers.
Oh, guests are joining me on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Chris is producing today, so the way he formats is a little different than the way Raj formats. So,
That's your polite way to say I'm bad.
neither one format's that great, but no, you're both terrible. That's, it's not that you're worse than him. So relatively, you're doing fine. You got to give Seattle some credit here. I think Seattle has played 2 excellent games top to bottom this season. One was against Arizona last night in a tough win, but a win, like a decisive one. And another was against the Patriots in week 2. Also, with a goal line to stand, a defender made a play. Isn't it interesting? Seattle, who my preseason pick in the NFC was New Orleans. I thought they were the best team. When Seattle made the deal for Jamal Adams, I thought, no, I don't believe in Seattle's defense, but I'll tell you what. It's one thing to have good players on defense. It's, a couple good players. It's another thing to have elite playmakers on defense. Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams, so far in their careers, have not been Pro Bowl caliber. They've been all-pro caliber. Like all NFL defensive first-team type players. Great players. If you keep this up, you will be in the Hall of Fame kind of players. So when you add a piece like Jamal Adams to a defense that has a guy like Bobby Wagner, I think, okay, it may not be a good defense, but they have some things that other teams don't. And so for that reason, because of Seattle's offense, I liked Seattle. And the improved line play, from like 3 or 4 years ago. Don't forget, Seattle sort of undid themselves by figuring that without really investing much in draft capital or treasure in the offensive line, they could just identify some guys and coach them up. And it didn't work. They had a bad line for several years. But their line has improved. And they went out and got Jamal Adams. And I thought, okay, I like Seattle. And they started the season really well. They were winning the games, right? But they were giving up a lot of points. And Russell Wilson was asked to win shootout after shootout after shootout. The only quarterback in the league. And he was undefeated for a while. One loss for a while. And then Jamal Adams got back. He's, not 100% healthy, and now he's getting healthier. And then they got Carlos Hyde back. So they still don't have Chris Carson, but they have Carlos Hyde. So they have their 2 elite defensive playmakers on the field. And they have one of their running backs back. And all of a sudden, things are a little different. Carlos Dunlap, how long ago did they trade for him? With the Bengals, right? Was a Pro Bowl caliber player who was paid a whole lot of money and then was disgruntled. So that becomes a distressed asset, and they wisely picked him up. And who was it who made the play at the end of the game, much like Bobby Wagner made the play on Cam Newton? It was Dunlap. Yeah, all of a sudden you look at that defense, you go, they got several pieces on defense. A couple of all-pro caliber guys, and I expect them to play better as the year goes on. Wagner and Jamal Adams. Dunlap and some other guy. Like all of a sudden they have some defensive pieces. And now they have Carlos Hyde back. And what's going to happen when Chris Carson comes back? Because the line has been playing better. Yeah, and you still have Russell Wilson, who's never won an MVP, and believe me, he wants it, but has been the best player in football over the last 5 or 6 years. Like in no one year maybe has he been the best, but take the last 5 or 6 years. Who's been the most valuable player in football over the last half dozen years? Pretty clearly Russell Wilson. No bad years. Ken in San Diego, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Hi, Max. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say that I thought I was going back in time when you opened your show talking about 2 black quarterbacks playing. I remember when Doug Williams beat my Broncos. Now, that was notable. But I think we're past talking about black quarterbacks. Now, you did mention that they were short. And as someone who's 5'7", and Doug Flutie is my hero, Altuve is my hero, that's notable. But I was kind of surprised that you brought up the fact that 2
Well, first of all, you shouldn't be surprised. We're not living in a post-racial world, as our national elections have shown you recently. The idea that stuff is, we're blind to that is ridiculous. Secondly, I was really referring to the style of play, where there's an overlap with kind of racial stereotyping and exclusions or obstacles to playing certain positions. There's overlap with it. It's not perfect, but there is overlap there. And so the style of play has changed in the NFL. And it's a more consumer-friendly style, and that has coincided, and I don't think is coincidental with the, I don't know if you call it relaxation of barriers or the overcoming of obstacles. So yeah, it occurred to me. It was on my mind, and since it was on my mind, I said it. And we can. I understand that obviously the league has a lot of black quarterbacks now. And it's not noteworthy in the way it once was. But there was that, and there was the fact that they're both short former baseball players. It wasn't exclusively about race to me, but that was a large part of it. It was the overcoming of kind of bias and biases and orthodoxy that was just incorrect. Right? Once upon a time, you didn't see black quarterbacks, and they were excluded from the position for racist reasons, and a lot of rationalization went into that. And you didn't see a lot of fast quarterbacks, and you didn't see a lot of short quarterbacks. By the way, there are, as you mentioned, Doug Flutie, but for the most part, you didn't see that. And then last night, we saw all those things, and it was a great game. And watching it, it did occur to me that those kind of biases that we're all prone to, as human beings, we're imperfect. But what those kind of things can really, a lot of times, and sometimes we start to really believe them. You can buy into the orthodoxy. And it doesn't have to be, let me take it out of the realm of kind of social stuff. The wild card in baseball. I was against the wild card in baseball. Why? I don't know. I liked the way baseball did it. I was used to it or something. Made the game more exciting, right? That you could point to a million different ways in which things change or evolve. And you can see once they do that, oh, wait a minute, the orthodoxy, the thing that I really was dug into, was nonsense. And who was I actually hurting? I was hurting myself as a consumer. Why would I want an inferior product? So I brought it up. I don't find that subject, it's not a verboten subject. But I can see as a 5'7" guy why you would love Doug Flutie. Now, I will say this. If you are a 5'10" quarterback, which both Kyler and Russell Wilson are, well, you better be special in some other way. Tua is very accurate, right? Baker Mayfield isn't. Baker Mayfield really doesn't have a single attribute that jumps out at you. And so because he's not very tall and he's not very fast, he's probably not going to be a great quarterback. He'll be a starting quarterback. But Kyler Murray not only can fling the football, but Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson are fast. And considering their speed of foot and their arm strength, which is obviously better than requisite for the NFL, also accurate. And they can also process information quickly and make decisions quickly. And so they can play at 5'10" or whatever they are. And not only play, but be outstanding at that height. News from Max Kellerman Nation. Ken just hit us up on the Dr. Pepper call-in line. Carlos Dunlap with 2 sacks and was in the zone last night. In the Zone is brought to you by AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Casey Joyner is joining me on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line right this moment.
Doing great.
What's up,
How are
Casey?
you?
Good. What was first of all, before I even get into the fantasy stuff and everything, I couldn't help but to notice that they get Carlos Hyde back, Seattle does, and they run the ball much better. And also the line has played better recently, but I remember it's stuck in my head. I brought it up on First Take a bunch, the run blocking metric, how a mediocre back gets 7 yards a carry behind good run blocking, how a great back gets 3 yards a carry behind bad run blocking. But I did notice, Casey, that I didn't think it was coincidental. Hyde comes back. They still don't have Carson, and they got a run game going. So what gives? What happened last night?
The thing is that there are running backs. You were talking last time we talked about how certain running backs, Napoleon had said that running backs make the line. It's not that they make the line. It's just that there are times when the line will, if you've got, say, got zone blocking, and a running back can choose which hole he can go to. If he's good at choosing the better hole, he's going to get better numbers. He is going to get a higher good blocking yards per attempt. So there are backs that can do that. I think the other Seattle backs weren't as good.
Wait a minute. Stop right there. In other words, the decision that the running back makes can improve run blocking.
It can maximize the value of good run blocking. If you got bad run blocking, you can make the most out of nothing. But
I understand. Well, that makes it more kind of more of a partnership between the back and the offensive line. In other words, the back's decision making actually does greatly kind of change the way you would think about that,
no? In fact, like, I'll give you an example. Boston Scott in Philadelphia, he had that big touchdown run. He had 4 carries last week, and he still had 65 yards and a touchdown because he had a long touchdown run. He's done some of the best work I've seen this year of being able to find a time where a lineman may have a second-level block that it came differently than what you'd show it on the blackboard, and he's able to adjust to it. A lot of backs just go to wherever the hole is, and that's it, and a lot of backs can't do that, and he's one of the best this year so far in finding ways to maximize his opportunities.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we've all seen, I see a guy like Le'Veon Bell in his prime. I thought was such a patient, smart back. He anticipated so well and waited for holes to open and anticipated where they'd be. And because I saw guys who looked more explosive to me, but he was more effective than them. And what you're saying is that's not just Pittsburgh run blocking. That's decision making by the running back, optimizing Pittsburgh run blocking. And if I said that correctly, I can move on. What running back has the most upside this weekend
in daily fantasy? I'm going to look at backs who have, what I want to look for is backs that have good run blocking. In fact, a lot of the league right now has been switching over to a more heavy emphasis on run blocking. In fact, the most successful teams you're seeing are doing it. In fact, like the Raiders are doing so well of late because their run blocking is fantastic. And by the way, I think they'll upset the Chiefs this weekend. But there are 5 teams that have favorable rush.
Chiefs are going to go 14-2, and they're going to lose both games to the Raiders. Before you go on, is Gruden going to throw outside the numbers for a while or in the first half and then go back to the run game in the second half? If so, why doesn't Andy Reid have something planned in exchange?
I think that we're going to get back to that discussion about shootout games, and if you want to get into them, and Kansas City's going to see if they can win that type of game because, I think they will try and go vertical. But Kansas City, the one thing they don't do well on defense is handle a power running game. They can handle just about everything else, but if you can punch them in the mouth, they're just not very good at handling that type of game. And since the Raiders are doing so good at run blocking and it's in Las Vegas, I just think they're going to be able to establish the running. I think they're going to get their second one against Kansas City.
But wait a minute. But that's the opposite of how they did it in the first game, right? They were throwing the ball down the field in the first half. They ran up the score. And then in the second half, Gruden started going to the running game. You're saying what? That he's going to reverse the order of that?
I think he's probably going to go power heavy on the ground and then go vertical. I think he's going. I do think he is going to reverse course. He'll go power heavy to get that run game going, and then say I'm going to go vertical on you that way. So.
The old switcheroo Andy Reid's got to be ready for. Last time, he ran in the second half. This time, that tricky John Gruden. Okay, so which running back has the most upside this weekend?
I'll give 4 names that have really good upside because they're on teams that are running the ball a lot, and they've got highly favorable rush defense matchups. I like Kerryon Johnson if Swift doesn't play. I like Balaj. I like Rex Burkhead because they've got a favorable matchup, and he can both catch the ball, obviously, and he gets rotated into the run game.
Swift is out, by the way.
Okay, I didn't see that this morning.
Yeah, just came out.
I mentioned Boston Scott earlier, and I think that he could get enough carries too because I don't think that Philadelphia wants to just bell cow Sanders. I think the way Scott has been hitting home runs, I think they'll want to rotate him in there. I bet he gets double-digit carries this week.
Kerryon Johnson's got to be the greatest name for a running back of all time, right? Kerryon Johnson. Are analysts and fans overreacting to quarterback interceptions this year? This is a question that was written for me by Chris, the substitute producer today, and I was not aware, Chris, that the analysts and fans were reacting even to quarterback interceptions, to tell you the truth. But are they overreacting to them?
I think they are, and
Casey?
it's a matter of the way that the league is going interceptions. It's like every time Phillip Rivers throws one interception, people are going, oh, my God, it's Phillip Rivers. He's such a risk-taking quarterback. He makes so many errors. He's got one of his lowest interception rates in years, and he's playing fantastic other than the occasional pick. But I think they are. But here's the thing. This year, the interception in the 2000 season, the league-wide interception rate was 3.3%. 2010, it drops to 3%. Last year, it was 2.3%. This year, it's 2.2%. That's like a 33% drop in interception rate league-wide over the years. And in fact, if you go back to 2000, there were only 3 quarterbacks with an interception rate of lower than 2%. 2010, it was 7. 2019, it was 15 quarterbacks. You just got a lot of quarterbacks who aren't throwing interceptions. So every time Carson Wentz or Phillip Rivers or Daniel Jones even throws a pick, their numbers are going to skew high comparative to the rest of the league. And I think people are seeing that and going, hey, you just can't have even one interception anymore the way quarterbacks are protecting the ball.
Yeah, I remember, and I have to look it up, but like Tom Brady before the Randy Moss, ridiculous 2017, but in that first half of his career used to be a high middle quarterback in terms of his numbers, and I recall him mid-20s touchdowns and about a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And when you got that, you're like, okay, that's good. Yeah, it's not that good anymore.
No, it's not. And in fact, I had a metric for years that I tracked called bad decision rate. It's how often the quarterback makes a mental error that leads to a turnover opportunity for the other team. So you're forcing passes into coverage, misreading coverages, things of that nature. Brady, in the early years of that metric, I started tracking in 2003. The early years, he's like the only quarterback with a bad decision rate of lower than 1%, and every year he does it. And then a few other quarterbacks that might rotate in. Manning would occasionally do it, but he was the only guy. I stopped tracking it a couple years ago because almost like 15 quarterbacks were now at or below that 1% range. Quarterbacks have just been trained so much better today to avoid those bad decisions that no longer was Brady the only guy capable of doing that. And I think that's why he had to make bigger plays, too. That's why he has to now start to throw 40 touchdowns, because the high percentage play he had early in his career just won't work to the same extent.
Right, he's not winning on the margins in the same way. And by the way, that's if someone said, why is Brady the GOAT, the number one reason really is he made fewer bad decisions than the other guy, right? His decision-making was better. And Belichick and Brady, too, they let the other team beat themselves, but they weren't going to beat themselves. But, okay, let me ask you this. What do you think about Taysom Hill as the quarterback coming up in this game? First of all, Sean Payton told me, swore, Taysom Hill's the quarterback of the future. I thought he was going to start Jameis Winston. He was shining everyone on. I didn't know to what end, but he's giving Taysom Hill the ball. Now, Stephen A. Smith on First Take says, Max, he's only thrown off a handful of passes in his career. He's 30 years old. Why do you think that is? My reply is because Drew Brees is 40 years old, and he's backing up Drew Brees, basically. I know that he's more familiar with the offense, obviously, than Jameis Winston. But he is getting the start. Do you think Taysom Hill is actually an NFL quarterback, or is he a gadget player right now getting the ball temporarily?
I'm going to trust that Sean Payton's putting together a type of game plan that will take advantage of what he can do. So I'll say he's an NFL quarterback, and I also think that Sean Payton looks at Jameis Winston and goes, wow, you're coming off a season where you threw 30 interceptions. And it used to be that back, I mentioned that bad decision rate metric. It used to be that Drew Brees was actually, he would have high bad decision rate metrics, higher than you'd expect. He was much more of a risk taker than people thought that he was. And in recent years, he started to scale that back and bring that number back down, because I think they realized, again, we can't throw interceptions. So I think that's what it is that Sean Payton looks at Taysom Hill and says, I can trust you to not throw interceptions, because every other coach who's had Jameis Winston has tried to coach him out of his interception penchant, and none of them have done it. I don't think I could do it either, so I'm going to go with the guy who doesn't throw picks.
So why is he on the team?
Well, because he's still a better backup quarterback than most. If you need somebody for like what happened last week, if you need somebody to come in there, maybe you're going at that point you'd have a choice but to risk the interception. So I would guess that that's part of it. But generally speaking, yeah, I think they just think that you're a guy we want to rotate in as an emergency guy. But I think he wants to avoid the picks more than anything else.
Casey, when I was a kid, a guy who was a 30-30 guy was like Bobby Bonds, Barry Bonds' daddy. 30 home runs, 30 steals. 30-30 guy, Jameis Winston, 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. It's unbelievable. The great Casey Joyner, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, wait, is Casey there? You got to let him plug it. Chris, you got to let him come plug whatever he's got to plug. Okay, Casey, are you there? See, look at this. I bring you back just so you can plug whatever you need to plug for coming on the show.
My website is
what do you got?
thefootballscientist.com. I've got my paid subscription service, does fantasy football stuff. You go there and check it out and use the code MAX, save 10%.
Okay, wait, where do they have to go to use the code MAX?
thefootballscientist.com.
thefootballscientist.com. Use code MAX. Save some money. This is great stuff if you're in a fantasy league especially. Thanks, Casey.
Exactly.
Always appreciate it. Talk about my favorite subject, the New York Yankees. In 1996, they won the World Series. In 97, they were knocked out in the first round of a classic series. Sandy Alomar homered off of Mariano Rivera in Game 5. It was a 5-game series. 98, 99, 2000, they won the World Series. 2001, they came within an out of winning the World Series. 2002, they lost in the first round to the team that went on to win the World Series, the Angels. 2003, they lost in the World Series in 6 games to the Marlins. 2004, they came within an out of getting to the World Series, where considering the team that they wound up losing to, they were up 3-0, about to sweep the Red Sox. The Red Sox came back on them, beat them in 7 games, and then swept the Cardinals. Considering what happened between the Red Sox and the Cardinals, I think the Yankees would have been favored to beat the Cardinals and win the World Series in 2004, but they didn't win. And they were in the playoffs in 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. They missed the playoffs. They won the World Series again in 2009. And importantly, they did it with some of the core players they had from the previous team, from the previous dynasty, right? Including Derek Jeter. And that wasn't part of the same dynasty. Some of the same core players, same captain, same franchise, obviously. And they'd been to the playoffs in most of those seasons, all but one. And yet you can't connect 2009 to 2000, right? Too much time had passed. Steph Curry might win another championship, and he might even do it with Draymond, because the Golden State Warriors have a great owner in Lacob who's willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in luxury tax because he's competitive. Joe Lacob, who, by the way, is an epidemiologist, has a master's degree in epidemiology from UCLA, and happens to know much more about infectious disease than Scott Atlas, who is not an epidemiologist, but advises, the top level of the federal government about infectious disease, right? Like Joe Lacob is a very smart guy, and is a obviously very competitive guy and an excellent owner. Like, you wished he owned the team that you root for. And Bob Myers has been a great GM. It really has been. Just look what the Warriors have done, even before they ever signed Kevin Durant. Steph Curry wasn't the number 1 overall pick. Klay Thompson wasn't, a top pick. He was where would Klay go? I forgot already, but it wasn't a top 5 pick. Draymond Green was a 2nd-round pick. Iguodala could have been had in a trade. He was available. But those guys put them together, And that was the engine. If you really want to talk about what the Golden State Warriors were about, yes, the Splash Brothers. I would say 1, it was Steph. 2, it was Dre, his pick-and-roll partner, the guy that allowed them to play 5 out, the guy that would do all the dirty work. And then 3, it was Klay, Steph's crime partner in terms of shooting and scoring. And also, Klay's an excellent defender. And they still have a lot of those core pieces, right? They still got the same owner, same GM, Steve Kerr, same coach. Steph Curry, if you had to reduce the Warriors to one player, it would be him, same heart of the team. Draymond Green, if you had to reduce him to 2 players, still got him. Klay will come back eventually as some version of himself, still got him. But the Warriors ain't doing anything this year. They got no shooting. They have no shooting, the Warriors. None. Steph Curry's the greatest shooter of all time. Tell me one more average shooter on the team. Oh, they traded for Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre's not good. He's like, he could play ball. He's a rotation piece. He's in a good year, maybe an average starter, but he ain't a shooter. Well, there you see, Oubre, 35% from 3. That's below league average. And league average includes, positions other than the backcourt. or small forward. Oubre's okay. He's okay. He's just okay. And who else? Wiggins? Wiggins not a shooter. Pascal is not a shooter. I just named 3 guys who are going to get a lot of minutes. No shooters. Draymond Green's not a shooter. That's 4. Wiseman's not a shooter. That's 5. With Steph, I just named the guys who are going to get the lion's share of the minutes. Steph's the only one who shoots. Now, in a league where 10 out of 15 teams make the playoffs, well, no, only 8 make the playoffs. 9 and 10, it's a play-in game. Oh, shut up. The season is over, right? And now you're still playing basketball? That's the postseason. Call it what you will. 2/3 of each conference make the postseason. So sure, they can make the postseason. That's not going to be part of a dynasty. And by the way, the following year and the year after that, eventually, maybe Steph gets back to a finals, because I have a lot of confidence in Lacob and Myers and Kerr, not to mention Steph and Dre. But it ain't going to be connected to what we just saw. The Warriors were lucky to beat the Cavs the first time they beat them in the championship, right? Because Kyrie and Kevin Love got hurt, and it went 6 games. The Warriors were lucky to win. Had the Cavs been healthy, they'd have lost. But they won a championship. The following year, they won 73 games and lost in Game 7 to the Cavs. Then they added KD and won back-to-back championships. That's 3 in 4 years, very nearly 4 in 4 years. Very nearly 4 out of 4. That's over. That level of dominance. The Lakers rose in the Warriors' absence. And now it's like, okay, the Warriors are coming back. What do we have now? No unfair advantage with KD. The Warriors are back. No, the Warriors are not back. And they ain't going to be back for a hot minute. Hope Clay gets better, can get back to being most of himself at least, and we see the Warriors again in the finals in the future, but I'm afraid that's a long way off. 888-729-3776.
You heard First Take?
At least it's good to hear your voice finally, because I know on First Take I only hear you on the intro and outro.
Now hear Max's Last Take.
All right, the Dr. Pepper call-in line, 888-SAY-ESPN. Doug in North Carolina, you're on the Max Kellerman Show.
Hey,
Go.
Max. Starting to get a little excited about the Indianapolis Colts defense, but am I the only person who gets sick to my stomach every time Phillip Rivers drops back to throw a pass?
Yeah, and he's been playing well. You heard Casey Joyner say it, like people don't even realize how well Rivers has actually played, but I agree with you. Rivers' problem to me, and I always thought of him as a very tough guy, and I thought he'd be good in the clutch, is I find he's unreliable in the clutch. And it pains me to say it, because I was really rooting for that guy. I just liked him. I liked the cut of his jib. Tough guy, played hurt, and an excellent passer. But the playoffs have not been for Phillip Rivers. And this is a big game because of who he's facing, and I expect them to lose in spite of the fact that they have a good team. Ike in California, you're on the Max Kellerman Show.
Hey, Max, thanks for taking the call. So here's my last take, man. Everybody is up in arms about Clay going down, and it's a brutal injury. I hate to see him being off the court for 2 consecutive years, but I beg to differ with you. I think the acquisition of Oubre is going to pay off for them guys. I think Wiseman is going to get plugged right in. He's going to be great on defense and running the floor. And I see the Warriors can get home court in the playoffs and still can contend for a championship, man. You heard it here first. Don't never question the heart of a champion.
Contend for a championship. Hold on. Wiseman is, well, first of all, I like the Warriors a lot. The fact of the matter is they should have lost to the Cavs the first time they played. The Cavs' second-best player was Matthew Dellavedova in that series because Kyrie and Kevin Love went down. And, it's pretty obvious, given the fact that LeBron extended them to 6 games without those guys, that the Cavs would have won probably in under 7 games with them. That's 1. 2, LeBron beat them the next year, right? So they were lucky to get the 1 out of those first 2. Then they added Kevin Durant. And at a certain point, you stack the talent so high you can't lose. So, yeah, they won back-to-back championships. But when you talk about championship heart, that's not what I think of when I think of the Warriors. I think of almost 5 minutes of 0 points in Game 7 against the Cavs at home, at Oracle. In a season they should have been called the greatest team of all time. They choked it away. No, I don't think of the Warriors as one of the all-time great heart teams. I think of them as one of the all-time great teams. Maybe the second, with KD on that team, maybe other than the Bulls, the best team ever put together. But that's different than saying, never question the heart of a champion. Yeah, I would question the Warriors that way, absolutely. They were better than the Cavs the first time, and they would have lost had the Cavs not been hurt. And they were much better than the Cavs the second time, and the Cavs actually beat them at home. And I don't even want to hear about, because Stephen A. brings this up, stimulus that the league sent them when they suspended Draymond for that game. Hey, Draymond had a bunch of texts because he was acting up. LeBron goaded him, and Draymond took the bait, got himself ejected. I mean, that's part of having a live wire on your team is that he can hold it together, right? Dennis Rodman or someone like that they can walk that fine line. Draymond didn't. That's part of your team. So, and by the way, you had players with heart, Clay and Iguodala and Draymond, those are players with heart. But as a team, I wouldn't say the Warriors were this never say die. No, they were just better than everybody. And still they figured out a way to lose or come close. But, as I said, great owner, great GM, great coach, great superstar in Steph, great system, and they still have talent. It's just, at this moment, the talent doesn't fit. Yeah, they can run with Wiseman and Oubre and Wiggins and these kind of guys, but they don't shoot it well enough. Interestingly, Brian Windhorst said, keep your eye on J.J. Redick. That was a guy they really liked as a fit with this team, and boy, could they use some J.J. Redick. I mean, you think the Warriors could use J.J. Redick right now? Think of the greatest shooting backcourt of all time, two of the greatest shooters of all time. I think Steph is the greatest ever shooting the ball. Draymond back then was shooting 38 from three. Harrison Barnes could hit shots. Obviously, KD could, right? Iguodala could shoot it well enough when you needed him to. You go from that to not even a single guy outside of Steph shooting it average for his position. You have two or three below average shooters and two or three dudes who don't shoot a bit. That's your whole lineup. They need J.J. Redick in the worst kind of way. Shanae and Golick Jr. coming up next. Good weekend of NFL football. Raiders upset the Chiefs again. Imagine the Chiefs end up 14-2 and both losses are to the Raiders.